Hey, no other at this time. Early check-ins. We're getting awfully close to the top of the hour, so I won't start a lot of dialogue here. We're having a pretty day here today. I hope Chip comes on and as New Orleans ends up getting another effects of another tropical storm that came to Texas that lingered along the Gulf Coast and hadn't really hurt in New Orleans, but the effects of the water were apparently the entire Gulf Coast region, even through Mississippi, was greatly affected. Are you on yet, Chip? M5RTF? AA4FL? Okay. Hopefully Chip's going to be able to check in. He may be at the new house that he just purchased that survived the hurricane, even though it's on the water. And I know you mentioned in an email recently that uh, he did not have internet coverage there yet, so that could be problematic for the weekends. Hilton has posted the link to the YouTube video, and I'm looking at the IM feature of NetLogger, and I also see that K3FCT is online, so I'm going to check you in, Stephen. And in just a minute, we'll be opening up the net, so I'm going to let it drop one. Okay, now I see Jack is with us too, KD4IZ. So far, I have 7 check-ins. This is the top of the hour. We're going to start a Marco Digital Voice Net for this week. This is Jay, your net control, AA4FL, and our purpose of our digital voice net is to provide a discussion forum for current medical events and issues. And we act as topic presenters, primarily Marco members, but others are welcome to attend. We would welcome you to either check in or listen. If you are listening, we'd like you to be able to not feel pressured into discussing if you don't want to participate, but we would prefer to know you there. So please do check in and just let us know that it's for listening only. Let me let it drop one. So this is a directed net working from the login list. You can see the login list on NetLogger. If you'd like to go online and download that program if you don't already have it, we do meet weekly on Saturdays at 1500 UTC, so link repeaters. And we are on the QuadNet array. So being on the QuadNet array, we're linked all over the world to servers, repeaters, and just realize that you can come in and use the QuadNet array with different modalities, having a sort of a translator of all the different digital modes. But please do pause before you key up and after someone else keys down to allow all these different technologies to sync and harmonize with each other. And I'll let it drop one here. Are there any stations that have emergency or priority traffic for the net? Please call me now, Net Control AA4FL. Okay, I know there's some stations that are limited in time. K3FCT, I see your post. Congratulations. Steve has got his son getting married today at his house. So nice that you're stopping by, Steve. So let me start by letting you go ahead and make your comments. You're short term here, then we'll let others. Go ahead, K3FCT.
Thank you, Jay, and good morning to all on the net. And yeah, uh, After pointing at it for several weeks, several months, we are finally at the day. And lots happening here, and I'm back up for anything that needs doing. So, as far as anything beyond that, we did have a rehearsal dinner last evening outdoors at a restaurant, and we were actually the only occupied outdoor table, so it was quite a comfortable setting. Beyond that, I have nothing to contribute to today's discussion. Appreciate the courtesy of the net letting me go first. Jay, your outstanding leadership of our activity here in building the participation in Marco Digital VoiceNet is most remarkable. Thanks, everyone. I'll say 73, and this is Steve in West Mount Airy, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. K3FZT will be clear.
Once again, congratulations, Steve. Have a beautiful day there with son getting married, and wish him for us all the success and happiness in marriage and life. I'm sure you'll have a lot of wisdom to impart, as fathers always do. 7-3, Steve. Thanks for checking in and taking the time. Are there any other stations that are going to be short-term today, pressed for time or mobile? Go ahead and make your calls now to Net Control AA4FL. Okay, well, no others that are pressed for time, so we'll have a nice, congenial, enjoyable discussions today in a very relaxed manner, with maybe college football being the only inhibition to longer transmissions. Are there any stations now that would like to check in, regular check-ins? Go ahead and make your call. Victor Echo 7 Bravo Sierra Papa, Richard in Victoria, British Columbia. Richard, it's absolutely wonderful to have you with us. VE7 DSP, great hearing from you. Missed having your input, always so on target. And we're looking forward to hearing your perspective from Western Canada today. Yeah, this is, again, AA4FL. This is the Medical Amateur Radio Council Digital VoiceNet. And these is a net that usually, for the most part, members participate in, but we're not limited to that. All members of the QuadNet Array, individuals that use this wonderful technology, are welcome to participate. The participation can be in the discussion, it can be just listening, but I encourage you to check in so we know that you're here, and then you can let us know if you would just like to be a listener only. Do we have any QuadNet Array members that would like to check in now? Go ahead and make your call. I know additional check-ins heard. Quite often we do have administrators, many different ones actually, from the QuadNet Array that stop by to say hello. And one consistent message from the administrators is to make sure to allow the signals time after unkeying, and when rekeying, give it a time pause. Let everything have time in between to synchronize, and we'll have more success with the coordinate arrays technology serving its purpose, which is transcoding signals and distributing them for us to have a functional net that goes beyond the limitations of one digital node. So at this time, we have no additional check-ins. I'm going to let the discussion start with PY2BBQ, who's our first check-in. Go ahead, Hilton.
Okay, good morning, A4FL and everybody from Marco DVNet this Saturday morning. This is PY2BBQ Hilton from São Paulo, Brazil. And glad to be here again with you. And we have some good news here regarding the COVID-19 control and vaccination in Brazil. It's growing very quickly. We have here in São Paulo state virtually the whole adult population already receiving the first doses, and almost 18% with the second doses as well. I'm talking about the adult population. And we expect to the end of this month or next month, at least, we have the whole adult population already vaccinated, and it's being translated in the decrease of new cases and the number of deaths as well. Of course, it's not going to zero, as we always see in the epidemiologic graphic. It goes down, but does not go to zero unless we have a mutation of the virus or a vaccine with 100% of its efficacy, which is not the case. And so it's being discussed here the reason why the Delta variant did not result in an increase of new cases here in Brazil. We didn't see that as it was seen in other parts of the globe. And what is being discussed is that the reason is that the Delta variant arrived in Brazil when we had already a good level of vaccination of the population. So, and another reason is that we are still using masks, and we are still having measurements of social distancing, what's been protecting the population for sure. Wait one. Okay, PY2BBQ back to the Marco DVNet. So that's probably the reason why. We have already started the third shot for the older population. Last week was those from 90 years old and above. And as well, the younger population is receiving the first doses, those with 12 years old and up. So that's the way the vaccination is going on. There's a lot of discussion about the third shot regarding the type of vaccine that should be used for the third shot, and it seems that the better would be to use the Pfizer vaccine for those who received the Sinovac vaccine as the first and second shot. And we had problem also with the AstraZeneca's vaccine, and many people that received the first shot with the AstraZeneca, in the end of the story, received the second shot with the Pfizer vaccine. But anyway, it's resulting in control of the pandemics here. And yeah, as I was talking to Jay before the starting, that a few weeks ago I was invited to assume the national coordination of the Brazilian National Amateur Radio Emergency Network that is getting off the paper, and that's because of a good job that we had here in São Paulo State with the São Paulo State Emergency Amateur Radio Network. That is that it works together with the São Paulo State Civilian Defense, where I worked for about 8 years. So another thing I've been doing is improving my CW skills. I'm doing the intermediate course at CW Academy, and it's been very nice, great joy. So back to you, Jay. A4FL, PY2 BBQ.
Thank you for the nice report, Hilton. PY2 BBQ, AA4FL, and I look forward to some submissions for the ether so we can go ahead and get some of that information to the wider organization. I was mentioning to Hilton before in our discussions that the recordings that he makes are extremely useful and important, and we're going to be able to reference those within the ether itself. So we do appreciate those as well. I'm glad to hear you're working on CW skills. I was a little interested when a new student applied for membership at the university club, and he mentioned he was recruiting new students, and part of the reason was they wanted to learn CW. They weren't ham, so this was a very interesting comment. I'm looking forward to finding out more about that as I meet him in person when I get back to Gainesville this week, but let me let it drop one. But Hilton, if you're honing your CW skills, consider coming with us to on the trip to St. Martin in May, because we're going to be doing the CQWPX CW contest. And it sounds like you're going to be primed and ready. Let's move down the list of those that are here with us to have checked in. And WJ8B, why don't you go ahead and take the mic, Andy?
Well, good morning, everybody on the net. Nice sunny day here in Ohio. It's going to be fairly warm, already up in the upper 70s, supposed to make it to 87. Just take a walk with the dog before it got too hot. My daughter's dog. We're watching. And because she's working 60 plus hours a week as a ICU nurse, which is basically a COVID nurse at the present time. He gets kind of bored when she's not there. So, as far as Ohio, positivity rate pushing 15%. The last local notification of that, which is kind of bad. Many of the rural hospitals, in particular, are struggling. We're not out of ICU, but statewide, maybe. And fortunately, we are a fairly dense populated state. So most of the smaller towns are within 70 miles of the major metro area, so they can get people transferred out. But it is sad that has occurred. Our vaccination percentage is only around 50%. And as Hilton mentioned earlier, that is the key. You have to have the vaccination rate getting close to 80%, or things like the Delta variant get in there. Nearly all of our cases are the Delta variant. I did finally find out when we break the time. I did find an article, strangely enough, is in National Geographic. And it's talked about, I think his fellow is Michael Warren, Lauren. And so it was just probably 2 days ago. I haven't had a chance to fully memorize it yet. But people are interested in how the gene sequences are monitored, which genes have been modified for each of the individual variants. It tells about that in this article. And also has postulated mechanisms how this occurs. They don't consider the U variant important right now because there have not been enough cases, but obviously Alpha, Delta, and Gamma are considered all considered a problem, although here in the U.S. it appears to be all Delta. So, not too much else than that. I did send a link to that article to the Markham link, and hopefully if anybody is interested in that, they can read about it further. I'm probably going to read it again because going through it in detail on the net would take way too long, and to be honest, I just read it an hour ago, so I'm not that familiar with it myself. So thank you, Jay, from WJ.
Well, good morning, Andrew. Thank you for letting us be aware of the article. Look forward to seeing it and reading it in detail, and perhaps applying it as information in the ether. And any one of us who are listening today, please, I encourage you, if you have something of interest, we're focusing on technology in the October ether. So the technology can be in terms of treatment. If you have something about amateur radio that frames it to COVID, in terms of communications and technology, that's very pertinent. But it also will stress genomics and monitoring, genomic monitoring, and the technology of that, hopefully. Well, we have that contribution coming from an epidemiologist at the University of Florida who's often quoted in the media. So if you do have something to submit, feel free to directly submit it to me. Let me let it drop one here for a moment. For those of you on the QuadNet array that have come in a little late and are listening, this is the Medical Amateur Radio Council, our digital voice net, which for the most part is member driven. However, you do not have to be a member to participate or to listen. And I am going to break for a moment for the next individual on the list has a chance at the microphone and give stations that have not checked in yet an opportunity to do so. So I'm opening up for late check-ins. This is AA4FL Net Control. Make your call.
This is N5 RTF checking in.
QSL check, N5 RTF. We weren't sure if you were going to be internet enabled, if you were going to be at the new house. So thank you for coming in. That was an area of expression prior to the net that we discussed. Glad to have you along. I'm going to go ahead down the list, Jeff Bell, and start with N9OML next. Howard in the Chicagoland area. Go ahead, Howard.
Good morning, Jay, and everybody on the net. If you'll indulge me for a moment with what I used to call partly personal, thank you very much for including me. We have one national office appointment, one person whose son is defending a dissertation, and another whose son is getting married. Not exactly a group of underachievers, so I appreciate you letting me participate and chat with y'all. Stand by one. It's a beautiful fall day up in the Chicago area. September and October, I'm in the best weather that we get for the year. So if you're ever thinking of coming to Chicago, this would definitely be a time to do it seasonally. As regards our COVID situation, with one exception that'll come to in a moment, it appears that things are a little better than they had been. The first one quote was Dr. Arwoody from the Chicago Department of Public Health, who indicated that there's a slight improvement in the numbers, both or all COVID fatality, COVID hospitalizations, infections, and test positivity rate, and everything seems to be trending in a better direction. Whether that represents a plateau or a actual downturn in the statistics and improvement is yet to be seen. It's just too small a sample and too short a time period. But it's better than some of the weeks where we've reported definite problems. The one issue that they're still experiencing is in far southern Illinois, Zone 5, that incorporates, I believe it's 22 counties in the far southern end of the state, a very rural area that's somewhat underserved medically to begin with, and they have no ICU beds available. I don't know how real-time that reporting is, so obviously that's a very fluid situation, but at least for part of the time they were reporting no beds. So we're not out of the woods, but not as bad as things have been. As far as the information Hilton passed on, it's a grand example of the potential impact that compliance with masking, social distancing, and mass vaccination could have if we could scale it up nationally here and internationally, that it sort of proves the concept that things could work. This is N911, back to net control. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Howard. And again, thank you for submissions that you've been able to make, articles you've been able to send along. It's nice to have contributions from members and friends. Next on the list, Keith, N3IM, who is in Penn State territory, getting ready for a whiteout of the snow type today up in Happy Valley. Go ahead, Keith.
A4FL in the Marco Group. This is N3IM. Well, my only comment is the CDC is telling us that the original variant that caused COVID-19 to start in January 2020 is no longer present. They have a data on various variants. It looks like alpha, beta, and gamma are all 0.0%, but delta is now 99.4% of the COVID testing as of September the 11th, 2021. And that may be good news. I don't know that the Delta variant is as potent as the original variant, but it is still causing problems. So at least we've gotten rid of the first three variants, and that's maybe good news overall. So, in our state, we're still fairly open here. There are businesses that say, we prefer you wear a mask. Most of them say that if you've been vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask. The hospitals here are still requiring a mask when you're in the hospital. And I believe that's more to protect the hospitalized patients than the visitor or the person seeing a specialist. Other than that, it's turned out to be a sunny day. It was quite foggy when I first woke up. Couldn't see more than about 30 feet. But now the sun's out and things are starting to clear up for the game. So this is N3IM, back to the Marco Group.
Well, thank you, Keith, and I'm sure that there will be a wonderful time held by all in Happy Valley, particularly if they can win today. Having been to one of those whiteout games in the past myself, it's an exciting thing to have happen. And I know you have friends in the area that are often at Hamvention. And we're going again this year, guys, just to let everyone know. Look for information in the ether. We do have our hotel approved, And I'll be giving the information for you to make your hotel reservations in the upcoming issue of the Ether. Steve is next on the list, and he's the one who's having his son get married. And he came on as a short-term presentation, and I was having him check in before that important event, life event. KD4IZ, Jack, are you with us? Yes, I am. Hang on just a second. I think I've definitely screwed up. Is the audio okay? The audio is readable. It's acceptable. Over. Okay, that's what counts. Well, we don't really have much to report on the COVID front. I was gratified to see last week that the Maryland legislature chose to approve masking in school, much to the dismay of some of the opponents, who were very noisy, but a very small group. We've gone ahead with that, and we're seeing a little bit of a downswing right now. We had a burst of activity a week ago or so, and some counties are still very hot. Not surprisingly, they're the more populated ones where there's a lot of travel in and out to Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Prince George, really in Anne Arundel, in the Montgomery County, in the case rate's down in general, which is a good thing, and I think it's because Maryland has done exceptionally well in terms of vaccine administration, and a lot of the businesses are being very responsible about it, protecting their own people as well as their patrons. We have a noisy few that still go on and on about their personal right to punch other people in the face. But I guess President problem everywhere. To one degree or another, but I think we're doing pretty good here. Other than that, all kinds of things happening. I'm not going to go at length in any one of them. Just to say, today it's beautiful in here. I'm going to get out and do some distance walking today to try to get in some exercise before I ride herd as a sweep behind the Walk Across Maryland. They call it Hike Across Maryland. This year we're doing a half hike across Maryland. We're not doing the full 40 miles, we're only doing 20. But I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun. And I'll be communications and first aid sweep for the hike. And that's why it's a good one.
Lid.
Okay, I'll turn it back to you. Good morning, all. KD4IZ. Well, Jack, thank you for stopping by and spending time with us. Have a healthy and enjoyable hike. It's nice of you to help with providing communications. Have a wonderful weekend as well. VE7, BSP, Richard, we're thrilled to have you here with us. Sorry you're kind of at the end of the list and have to wait, but please take the mic.
Hey, 4FL, V7BSP, good morning, all on that. I'm delighted to be able to be back here this week. It's been challenging for demands on my time in the hospital system to get here. Here in Canada right now, just in the last several days, our Health Canada, which is the equivalent to the Food and Drug Administration in the U.S., has now fully approved 3 vaccines. The Pfizer-BioNTech version, the Moderna one, and the AstraZeneca one, so they now have full proper commercial names. None of which are easy to pronounce, so we're still calling them Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca. But that's now in place as fully approved vaccines for COVID. Our COVID infection rates are actually still climbing. The overwhelming majority of them are identified as Delta variant. And here in British Columbia, it looks like we might be just starting to get to a plateau peak, but still a little bit hard to detect that yet in the data in terms of daily infection rates. The Okanagan Valley, where our wine from BC and a lot of our fruits and that sort of stuff in BC come from, is the hardest hit at the moment. Wait one. So continue on then. The other thing we now have here in British Columbia is that all healthcare workers, whether you're clinical or not, whether in long-term care versus acute care, all included, must now be fully vaccinated by the end of October, because there are still some groups that hadn't taken that step yet. But the ministry's now come out and made that declaration. Next door to us in the province of Alberta, their government and chief medical officer for the province has now come out and declared that their summer plans for reopening and COVID management over the summer did not work, and they have an overwhelming number of COVID patients in addition to all the regular patients in their hospitals, to the point where they have no more capacity as a province, and they're now looking to move patients to other provinces that still have capacity. Wait one. Atlantic Canada is actually still going well and doing well overall. Their original construct around having a bubble for 4 Atlantic provinces has worked well for them. And the bubble has been dissolved, but as a whole, they're still way ahead in terms of management of COVID infections in the country. And then Ontario and Quebec are having nothing unexpected. It's sort of major trends, same as everybody else. And I'll pause there and return to Jay at Net Control. This is VD7 AST.
Yes, Richard, thank you very much for joining us today and for the description. Sounds like you've been busy indeed. And we wish nothing but the best, of course, for Canada and the United States and the rest of the world. And appreciate everything that you are doing, and many others here that have family members that are involved in direct line of making sure COVID is tamed and patients are protected. And again, thank you again, Richard. N5RTF, Chip. Good morning, New Orleans. Where are you operating from here this morning, Chip? Go ahead.
I'm sitting on the screen porch looking out over the water. We're approaching high tide here, so my little walkway is about covered up. I'm going to have to get a pier built pretty soon. No COVID out here. That's the word you don't hear much anymore around here. We did have about 2,000 new cases, about 50 deaths reported last week in Louisiana, but all it takes is a hurricane to take people's attention completely away from it. People don't even talk about COVID anymore unless somebody deliberately brings it up. N5RTF.
Okay, I was counting Chip for one. I don't know if others had him drop as well, but it sounds like he's in the new house here. We recently got in. I'm not sure how he's logging in. Chip, are you still copying us? It seems others have lost you as well. Realize your signal has dropped. Are you back to listening to us? Go ahead and N5RTF AA for us now.
I am copying members of the net. I had a little trouble with my Postar this morning. I wasn't picking anyone up. And then I went ahead and unplugged it and rebooted it, and then suddenly everybody was there. So I don't know if that's a problem at my end or connection, some parameter I haven't entered correctly. But I've had to do that before out here, and at home I don't think I've ever had that problem. N5RTF.
Yeah, we're currently copying you now, Chuck. So why don't we keep the conversations a little on the shorter side just to be sure in case it's an internet connection. I'm not sure what internet you got in there in the swamps, Louisiana. Now, you were just mentioning that COVID has been set aside, at least in the public sphere of discussion, because of the hurricane. Before you check in, we had questions of whether or not the rain that occurred from the second tropical storm had any effect on the general vicinity. Over.
We really did not get as much rain as we expected, probably 3 or 4 inches in the French Quarter area. Compare that with 22.38 inches in a 24-hour period during Ida. Big difference. So this is basically just a rainy afternoon here. Our annual rainfall now is well over 100 inches. N5RTF.
N5RTF, net control, AA4FL. My gosh, Chip, it sounds like you're a rainforest without the rain. Got to bring back some trees there and have a temperate rainforest. So I'm glad you didn't have problems from the second. In terms of COVID not being in the public sphere of discussion because of all the hurricane and its issues, did there end up being any type of a flare in COVID because of the evacuees and the intermingling of people in close proximity? Is there anything that you're aware of there? And RTF, go ahead, Chuck.
No, not really. I'm not aware of any rate increase. We still have dedicated COVID beds and ICU beds, but it seems to be gradually declining, and I don't I don't think that the shelters or evacuation, anything like that, really had much to do with it. In fact, it makes me wonder if maybe the best way to deal with this thing from this point on might be just to ignore it.
Well, Chip, you're making an observation. The governor of Florida has made an observation, and that, of course, he's not ignoring it, but he's pro-vaccine, and even though he may be anti-mask, and the numbers seem to be going down. But let's change the conversation over here to Andy, WJ8B, because the experience in Ohio sounds like it's a little different at this point. Can you contextualize that, Andy?
Yes, infection rate seems to have gone up. We hopefully start going on the downturn. We were as low as 2.5% positivity rate in May and June. And when the new variant arrived, it just gradually went up to that. The last one I heard was 12.5%, and has not started going the other direction yet. So that is a problem. What I noticed personally when going to the store or going to a ham fest, as I did last weekend, people who are younger, especially those in their 40s and down, tend not to have masks. Those are people who are older, who are probably vaccinated, tend to wear them. So it's and from my standpoint, when you got a positivity rate of 12.5%, you should be wearing your mask anytime you're indoors in particular. But people aren't necessarily following that advice, even though the local governments have had mask mandates. Normally, our governor, Mike DeWine, was very quick to have mandates on masks and other things, but the Republican state legislature legislature, I should say, passed a law saying it was illegal for him to give those orders. So what is happening now, most cities that of any size, the local mayors, or hospitals, or school administrators are giving the orders themselves, and there's a law, there's nothing clear cut that they can't do that. So that's how it's going here. It's unfortunate, but that's kind of what it is. It's a political thing, and the vaccination rate in rural areas is definitely less than those in cities. You can kind of follow that, and that's usually getting hit the hardest because of time. They have the least number of facilities to handle the epidemic, and also the ones being outdoors. That's it. Lyle, back to you from WJAD.
Thank you for the additional comments, Andy. And when I talked about the governor of Florida being anti-mask, I wasn't referring to him being anti-mask. I'm sorry for misspeaking. Anti-mask mandate. There's a big difference, of course. He's for vaccines and masks. He just doesn't want to mandate that individuals have masks. That's an individual choice. It'll be interesting when all is said and done how history writes the scenario, and also how interpretive it will be for any future pandemics or epidemics. We heard in the past from Hilton, who's here with us today, PY2BBQ, about the differences in the health service there in Brazil and how it's more interwoven into society as a separate entity aside from a political entity. And he had mentioned earlier in his comments how they've been able to address and get numbers down and get vaccination rates higher. Any follow-up on that, Hilton? PY2BBQ, AA4 Summit Control.
Okay, for FL and the group, this is PY2BBQ returning. Yes, that's something I was going to talk about. Not only the vaccination acceptance from the population, that seems to be something more cultural here in Brazil. The population is used to receive vaccines from the government, and many of them are demanded that they are obligatory. So you won't put your child in school if the vaccination is not up to date, for instance, or things like that. When you go to the army, you have to have a full set of vaccines as well. So it's part of the culture here. There was not so many people against the vaccines here as we saw in other parts of the world, and that probably helped it a lot. But one question that we still have is when we will be able to quit the masks. I'm a surgeon, and I can't stand using masks anymore. Even being a surgeon. I think you, Jay, as a dentist, feel the same. Okay, you use masks for working, but not every time you are in the streets. So, how long will it take? That's a question that we still have. Do the vaccination will be enough for us to quit using masks? I really don't know. Even though most of the population have already been vaccinated here and the numbers are dropping, we are still using masks. We still have no public in sport matches and a lot of distancing in restaurants and things like that. How long will it take? Wait one. APY2BBQ back. Because it seems that the vaccines are not 100% efficient, so we really don't have that answer. And as we saw other countries opening the guard and started to increase the number of cases because of the Delta variant, the government here decided not to quit the use of masks. That I think it was a good decision from the government. We support it 100%. And I think the real problem is that we not only need a complete vaccination on each country, but we need it in the whole world. It doesn't matter if here in Brazil we have most of the people vaccinated, or in the United States or in Great Britain, but the problem is that if you keep countries in South America, Africa, Asia producing new variants of the virus, we will have the unsolved problem. And it's a matter of World Health Association and not only separated countries' health policies. Okay, so back to you, Jay, A4FL PY2BBQ.
Thank you for raising the subject, Hilton. I'm going to turn it over in just a moment here to Richard, VE7BSB, to get his perspective from the Canadian side of the equation. But in reference to the comments, I would think that time will tell. Obviously, new variants can be an issue, but we also have not established the efficacy over time due to waning protection from the current vaccines. And the third booster, if the third shot bolsters immunity, and then we may be in that situation similar to, the flu, where we do occasionally get new variants. But hopefully the vaccinations that we get, and depending upon how often we have to get boosters, will protect you from severe infection. So we won't disappear, but when we reach that point, masks, I guess, could be helpful, but not mandatory. VE7BSP, what's your perspective there, Richard? Over.
A4FL, VE7BSP. Thanks for the question. Yeah, here in Canada right now, different provinces are looking at a booster vaccine dose in various stages of thinking and development around it. Obviously, we're hearing information coming out of global experts and World Health Organization about readiness or appropriateness of timing. We're all watching Israel's statistics as they come out and trying to analyze those, and looking to the UK as well, because obviously they're a little bit ahead of us timeline-wise. Here in BC right now, we're expecting some time in the coming days that our province will announce third dose vaccinations for all long-term care and assisted living residents, and the special populations that are somewhat compromised or have underlying conditions that would put them at a higher risk of infection, because it is being recognized that there is a little bit of fall-off occurring in terms of vaccination coverage against the Delta variant, which is our overwhelmingly predominant variant. In terms of other variants coming forward, the Lambda variant, we already know there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000 or more cases of Lambda variant in Canada, but it seems to have fallen off of the radar in terms of any media coverage. And I'm presuming, and that may be a bad thing to do, of course, but I'm assuming that it's just not producing the same degree or intensity of infection that the Delta variant does. And then, of course, the Mu variant identified just recently, lots to be watched and learned about with it. So we're staying vigilant, and we are expecting that in a relatively short period of time, we'll get directions to start ramping up to provide third vaccinations for long-term care and assisted living residents. And back to you, Jay.
Richard, thank you very much for your insightful comments from the Canadian side. And yeah, I mean, the Israeli research, of course, coming out of the Pfizer relationship with public health there has been quite helpful for other countries in giving a jump start to what may be needed in terms of boosters. But again, it will be interesting years from now when history is written to look in retrospect to the decisions made and the procedures that were successful and those that were lacking successfulness, both from a standpoint of science, from genomic monitoring, from a standpoint of politics and political influence and public perspective, and see if that raises a consciousness in a different way in preparation for this in the future, that it can be depoliticized and be approached. I mean, it may be another century. We certainly didn't learn the lessons from the Spanish flu of the late teens of the 20th century. But hopefully we won't have to deal with it for another 100 years. It will just be a chronic issue. Are there any other comments from other net participants along these lines? Please go ahead. I'll make a list to give you a chance to discuss before we call the net to the close. Go ahead.
And I know enough.
Okay, one, Howard, and I am Noel. Please take the mic.
Thanks, Jerry. Just two thoughts. One, I didn't remember to point out that the various public health officials, and this was all of the ones that I stumbled upon while watching the news, and I am a bit of a newsaholic, pointed out that, to their knowledge, all of the significant morbidity and mortality events have been Delta variant and unvaccinated patients. Obviously, they haven't sequenced everybody, but in those that they have, that's been virtually exclusive. And then I don't know how you would construct the study, but I'm very curious if the social psychologists could delve into whether we would get better mask compliance if it appeared that masking was more protective of the individual wearing the mask. In this case, there's some protection afforded by wearing a mask for yourself, but it's more significantly to protect others. I wonder if that reversed, if we see more voluntary compliance. Just something bubbling around in my head. And then, back to net control.
Yes, thank you, Howard. AA4S net control. Of course, we live in an environment of being an affront to civil liberties and choice. So again, historically, when all is said and done, we'll have to see how analysis of the overall situation could offer solutions to the future. And descriptions of the type you're mentioning, Howard, of course, can be very constructive, but at the emotional level of importance of civil liberties to segments of the population, I don't know how much logical explanation can satisfy that. It's a very ingrained and primary response of individuals. Well, thank you, everyone, for being present for the net today. We're just about at the top of the hour. And and it was a very lively discussion. We do have an epidemiologist who's going to be offering an article in the ether. I'll get her a recording of today's map, let her review it, so she may be able to answer some of these questions in perspective of genomics and public health perception as an epidemiologist. I thank you for participating. Let me let it drop on here. And of course, always thank you to the coordinator Ray who makes this magic possible. We're able to have conversations between those of us that are participating with different digital modes that are transcoded by the coordinator Ray. They seem to have been a very good experience in the quality of that, and appreciative of their volunteerism and their generosity in offering the technology to us as a group. May that be a permanence in terms of the problems we're solving here that can be used for more joyful applications in amateur radio as time goes on and these problems abate. Thank you for being with us again, 7-3. We'll see everybody next week. I am not going to be hanging on too long after closing the net, but I will for a few for comments of personal nature. And with that being said, we're going to call the Marco Medical Image Radio Council Digital Voice Net for today to a close. 7-3. All have a wonderful weekend. AA4FM.